All right, well, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Gridiron Grind with Andrew and Lance. Today's episode is all about these superstars wanting out. So these guys wanting trades, saying I don't want to play for this team, or the teams are letting them explore the trade field, see if anybody wants anything. Um, Usually it doesn't happen, but we'll touch on those guys, and we're also gonna talk about a little bit of the franchise tag window, which is closing fast. But I have some takes to say about a couple things. So this is kind of our weekend take session, just on some names we want to talk about going into free agency. Where do we want to start, Lance? We want to start with some of these guys who wouldn't be traded, like a Matthew Stafford. That's probably the biggest name.
Yeah, another thing too, I was going to throw out there. We can get to it later since you kind of mentioned maybe on the back end, but just today, the Chiefs saying they're going to use their franchise tag on
Yeah.
your guy, Trey
Oh yeah,
Smith.
I'm unfortunately sad. My heart breaks. My heart breaks for him because he has to be on that team still instead of coming over to the number two overall favorite team of all the players. But he can't do nothing when he's franchised, unfortunately. Well, he doesn't have to sign it, so you never know.
Yeah, it's possible. Well, he'll be as much of a Minnesota Viking as Frank Gore was a Philadelphia Eagle.
Yeah, yeah, and he's gonna be making about what was it, 22 million for a franchise tag?
Uh, I think it's going to be more than
21,
that. I think
21, 22,
23.4,
23. Wow. Well,
23.4.
my heart doesn't break for him anymore. Guarantee. All
Could
that's
you
fully guaranteed too.
how can I just can't imagine that making
Hmm.
$23.4 million. Just wow.
Hmm.
Life-changing money right there.
It is. It really is. But yeah, let's start with Matthew Stafford because that's
Okay.
probably the biggest name going around. He's making this noise saying that he wants to make 50 million a year, which is kind of insane for a 37-year-old. Even though he's really good still. Don't get me wrong, he's still top six-ish talent as far as pure quarterback. And then with the team saying, yeah, you can go explore the market and all this steam about the Giants and like his brother-in-law is the quarterback coach there. Um, so there's a lot of steam connecting him with the Giants. And then just the past couple of days, have you heard about that Las Vegas Raiders thing going on?
Oh yeah, with Tom Brady. Yeah, I guess
Yes.
that they saw each other in Montana, right?
Well, th that and so I won't give out the names of these guys, but there was an insider that said basically that Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford made a like commitment to get together at his house, have a conversation about where he wants to go as far as the trademark goes, and then they went skiing and continued talking. And then someone else said, no, 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 that's not how that happened. They just happened to bump into each other at the ski resort in Montana. I think I side with the first one a little bit because it's kind of random to bump into each other at one ski resort in Montana at the same time. Someone's got to know something. But anyway, I kind of side with the first one where they had real conversations. But in my opinion, in the end, I don't think Stafford goes anywhere. He's asking for too much money, and the Rams are gonna be asking for too much back in compensation for maybe 2 more years at most of a quarterback. And if you're the Giants, for example, do you think you're winning the Super Bowl in the next 2 years? If you're thinking that, then they need to get tested for something else. Because that's just insane. Even with a good quarterback like Stafford, they are like 10 players away from thinking about competing for a Super Bowl. And the same thing with the Raiders. Are they one quarterback away? I don't think so. Brock Bowers is awesome. I love Brock Bowers, but defense is average, and they don't really have anyone outside of Brock Bowers on offense. Neither team is going to be Super Bowl worthy with Matthew Stafford, and it's going to cost them probably like a second round pick. So I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he's
I
staying with the
mean,
Rams, and they're going to have to work out some kind of contract, or he's going to get cut. That could be interesting because I don't think anyone's going to give up a second round pick unless they feel like they're one stud quarterback away from truly competing. And I don't see any one of those two teams being that close. Maybe the Steelers, but not one of those two teams.
The Raiders are an interesting option, though. I mean, because you think about it, eh, I like the running back core. I like Zamir White. I mean, I know he's
Mm.
not perfect, but he's a solid running back. By the way, Amir Abdullah had a phenomenal
He
end of
he
the
was doing pretty
season.
well. He was doing pretty well at the end of the
I
year.
mean,
Yeah. Hmm.
like those last 4 weeks, he was getting like 6, 8 catches a game. I mean,
Hmm.
probably getting 40 to 50 yards. Just a solid move the chains guy and get you down the field. Nothing wow factor wise, but if you're talking about
Hmm.
a second or third stringer, so Jacoby Myers is a solid wide receiver, but
Yeah.
to your point, outside of him, outside of Brock Bowers, not a great.
No.
I think
And
but here's what I would say, Andrew, to your point, as far as you're talking about, are they a Super Bowl contender? I don't know if that's the way I would phrase the question. I think the better
okay.
question is do you think he makes you a playoff contender? Because right now the Raiders, they're not even
Hmm.
flirting with the playoffs. They're
No.
not in content. Like, so let me
I
put it this
I
way.
don't know.
So, you look at the Aaron Rodgers to New York Jets move. And I think that that's a
Hmm.
totally different. I mean, I think you could compare him somewhat, right? Matthew
Hmm.
Stafford's at the end of his career. He's a phenomenal quarterback. He got at least one
Hmm.
Super Bowl ring, just like Aaron Rodgers. He's had moments where he was really, really good.
Hmm.
Um, but I think there's just different dynamics. The Jets went in thinking, this is the piece. This is the guy that's going to take us to
Hmm.
the promised land and he's going to get us out of the desert here in New York. We'll no longer be the irrelevant team. We'll
Hmm.
for sure supplant the New York Giants in being the better team of New York.
Hmm.
And they wasted way too much draft capital. But then, here's the
Right.
other part too is they didn't just trade for Aaron Rodgers. They went and got all of his buddies. And
Yeah.
so it
Lazard, all these guys.
it just put him in a massive amount of debt. I mean, really, it put him into cap hell
Hmm.
really fast. And
Yep.
so I think that you got that situation right, and you have that in your mind if this is what's going to work out. You're going to have where the
Hmm.
quarterback demands too much, wants too big of a salary, wants all of his friends.
Hmm.
But what if Matt Stafford is really just looking for somewhere to continue being relevant, being competitive, and would come in for just a second round pick? I don't think that's a bad trade necessarily. It could, but it depends on what your focus is. Are you
Hmm.
focusing on becoming a fixture in Las Vegas? Because, and we don't have to dive too much into sports here, but the Golden Knights are for sure the better team compared to the Raiders when it comes to competitiveness. In terms of
Hmm.
would I, as a fan, want to come watch this
Watch.
game?
Yep.
I wouldn't want to go watch a Raiders game. I wouldn't be
Uh-huh.
interested. I would go watch their opponents, but that doesn't increase fandom in Las Vegas. It just, you're getting sales, sure, but to what end? So I guess if
Hmm.
I'm looking at it from that standpoint, makes sense to me. If you really think that Matt Stafford, which I think there's an argument to be made, O'Connell was horrible.
Yeah.
Desmond Ritter was no good. Gardner Minshew was absolutely a mess this past year and
I
could
know. He
never seem
played
to
well
have
last
a.
year. It's crazy.
Yeah, just this past season though with the Raiders was not
Hmm.
good. Was
It
not
was
good.
not
I mean,
good.
he had that. The Ravens game was a like, okay, maybe Minshew might actually
Hmm.
be
It's a Minshew magic.
competitive. But the magic went away as fast as it
Yep.
came.
Hmm.
So but then, like, let's shift to another team, right? Like, let's talk about like the Giants. That would be a horrible move. It wouldn't make any sense. They don't have nearly enough pieces to get things together. Not to mention, I don't think the Giants know if they really have the right GM and coach, which is kind
See
of amazing
that?
that they
I
stuck with
think
them.
that reason might be why they might trade for him because those two guys might want to try to save their jobs. Because if Matt Stafford can get them above 500, the
Uh-huh.
owner might say, "Hey, let's see what we have here." And if they get another 5-12 season, they go home. So that reason, that point you just made might kind of make more sense of why he would go there. Why they might pull that trigger and say, "Hey, this is our last chance. We'll give you a second round pick. Let's see if we can maybe make the playoffs and get an extension." So I like that point.
I mean, I hear you, but that's where the owners got to come in and say, "Listen, you lost me,
Mhm.
Saquon. Um,
Yep.
it, there's
I'm
just
surprised
no
they haven't been
coming."
fired already When he hoisted that trophy, there should have been a phone call. Hey, don't come in on Monday.
I don't know what you do at that point. I mean, it's
Hmm.
amazing how bad things have worked out for them. It just and you know the other part too is they lost Xavier McKinney. They didn't just lose Saquon
Yep.
Barkley. They lost Xavier McKinney,
Hmm.
and I would argue he was just as important to the Giants on defense. I wouldn't say
Hmm.
he's just as good of a player, but overall, what he brought to the defense was
And
essential.
with the Packers, I think he led the league in interceptions this year.
Yeah, I
Something like
mean,
that. Up
you
there.
know,
Yeah.
the joke was after the first game with the Eagles against the Packers that Jalen just needs to quit throwing to where McKinney is and we'll be fine. I mean, and
Hmm.
McKinney was great. He was great at breaking up passes, of jumping
He
routes
was.
and getting interceptions. And
He was.
so I don't mean to send us down a side tangent there, but I just think that
That's what the show is all about.
we got to quantify things. You know, it's not just Super Bowl or bust. You got to look at it as continual progress. And, you
Yeah,
know,
continual progress, but with the quarterback you're going to only have for a couple of years, then what? When draft picks are for your team to get younger and sustain success, that's why I was saying that Stafford doesn't really make them a Super Bowl contender because at his age, I feel like that's what you need. I
hmm,
do understand being competitive, having fans in the stands again, being relevant. Absolutely. If that's their goal, perfect. Go get Stafford, get nine-ish wins, flirt with playoffs, maybe make it, maybe not. But if your ultimate goal is to win a Super Bowl, you need to save that draft capital, draft some really good really young players in the draft, and maybe pick up someone else to kind of get your season so-so. Like we'll talk about this guy later. Like if Sam Darnold doesn't sign a franchise tag, I would go after Sam Darnold for
hmm.
a little bit cheaper than Stafford's going to make because he's 27, Stafford's 37. And he's shown that he can win games in this league. Can he win in the playoffs? That's a different story. Totally different story, but he can win games. And he's young, and you can kind of build around him. Stafford, you'll have for a couple of years. And on the Rams side, if we want to go on that side, people are saying that they were one bad offensive line play away from beating the Eagles. I don't think so. Would they have scored without that bad offensive line play? Maybe, but the game wasn't over. There was still like 30 seconds left. Eagles could have easily marched down, kick the field goal, send it overtime, or win. I don't know what the score was. So everyone's saying that Matthew Stafford was one center mistake reading a blitz coverage away from beating the Super Bowl champs. I thought, no, I don't think it was like that because if he didn't get pressured on that fourth down, they might not have scored a touchdown there, and they'd had no timeouts left. Anyway, that's another side tangent. But they are still a really good team, the Rams are. So why would you get rid of Stafford, especially when there's not really an option to replace him with, unless they want to go after the Darnold option, which makes some sense. Similar offense to Kevin O'Connell, and maybe the brass over there thinks they can fix his postseason woes that he had. Maybe, but if I'm in the Rams, unless I'm offered like a second or first round pick, which that they shouldn't be. But if I'm not offered that, then I'm just gonna try to rework a deal. He's under contract anyway, so they have control. And if you're on the Stafford side of things, I mean, unless you're just wanting to get paid a really big payday before you leave, you already won a ring. If you're just wanting, hey, I want one last little payday, then go out from the sunset. Awesome. Go get your 50 mil, go in 8, 9 wins with the Raiders. Cool. Congratulations. But if he's looking for another ring, ain't gonna be with the Giants or the Raiders. Not this year.
So I'm just trying to think about it here. I think there's a couple of factors when we compare Darnold to Stafford. The first
Okay.
is it's one contract, but I think it's what Darnold's agent's going to hold to. He's going to ask for something north of what Daniel Jones got.
Oh yeah, for sure. He's Sam Darnold is probably gonna get around like a 42 to 45 million annual value a year. It's gonna be just slightly above the franchise tag because someone's gonna overpay. Someone will.
Yeah.
It's the quarterback market, and he had a phenomenal 14, 15 games in the regular season. and
Mhm.
someone's going to think, hey, we can get that out of him. We can do better. So, oh yeah, he's going to get paid.
So if you think about that, because Jones's contract was 160 million, 92 million guaranteed, so
Hmm.
more than half, just quite a bit more than half.
Yep. Thank you to Mr. Donatel for giving him all that money.
What a bad contract. But that's again another day, another time that we can dig
Vikings
into
fans called
the.
him Donna Shell because he just had everyone back and everyone just dink and dunk. So it was the Donna Shell defense. You're welcome, Daniel Jones. I'm glad you got your money. Now you get to come back to the team that gave you your money.
I just I guess like when I look at Sam Darnold,
Hmm.
I'm not saying that he played as you know to the same level as Daniel Jones. It's not the same. There's definitely moments where Darnold played better, but it's only 1 year. He's going to get that value. So let me put it this way,
Hmm.
Andrew, if you had the choice to either sign Sam Darnold and you have to sign him for a 4 year deal, and let's say it's an annual average of 45 million. Let's say
Hmm.
it goes a little higher, and he's the only quarterback on the market. So I think that it's going to trend
Pretty
towards the higher
much.
end than the lower end.
Hmm.
So what? Let's say that is about 180 million total over 4 years because you're bumping it 5 million more every year. Would you take that deal or would you trade for Matt Stafford and give up a third round pick, but he's only going to cost you $50 million a year for, let's say, 2 years?
Depends on my team. If I'm trying to build a team and want sustained success for 4 or 5 years, then I'm going Darnold. If I think I can win now, I'm going Stafford. Because Stafford has proven it in the playoffs. Darnold's still young. He developed
Hmm.
this year into a really good regular season quarterback. Some GMs, some coaches might think they can get that last little bit out of him. I don't think it's possible personally, watching him closely. I don't think he has it. But some
Hmm.
coaches and GMs will pull that trigger. They absolutely will. So it just depends on what you're looking for. If you're one quarterback away, you just need a quarterback rental. Kind of what the Jets felt like they were with Rodgers because they had a really good defense. Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, reworked their O-line. They thought it was good. It wasn't, but they thought it was good. It's like, okay, let's just get someone in here that knows how to run an offense, can fling it around. Let's have a run at this. And everyone thought they were a great team. I didn't think so. I'm sure you didn't think so. But there's going to be a GM and a coach that feels that way with a Matt Stafford saying, hey, we got a good defense. For instance, the Steelers. I think that'd be a pretty fair matchup. They got a great coach. Um, Debatable nowadays, but I still think he's a great coach. They have pieces on offense, not a lot, but pieces, but they have a really good defense. So if Matt Stafford can just move the ball, keep the defense off the field, maybe what, Justin Fields and Russell Wilson couldn't do, they were already a playoff team. Automatically going to be better with that. The Sam Darnold side, I see him more working well with a Raiders because they're still building. They have a lot of young pieces. They still have good defensive line. Brock Bowers. They're gonna be high in the draft, so they might pick up that McMillan receiver from Arizona, or they might go defense. We'll see what's available, but they're still building. And if Darnold can make them relevant, and maybe they just make one key move, who knows? So I kind of see it that way. It just depends on what you need. If you need to win now, Stafford. If you're needing to build something for the future, that's going to be Darnold. Because they're both, like you said, they're both costing similar. Stafford's going to be a little bit more expensive per year, and he'll cost draft capital. But if you're that close, who cares about a second or third round pick? You care about a Super Bowl. You're not going to win a Super Bowl with Sam Darnold this year, but you might with Matthew Stafford. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I guess the my heartburn is that end of the year was so bad with Sam
It
Darnold.
was. It
It
was.
it it, it could. I mean, really, I don't mean to
It
bag
cost
on
him a
him,
lot of money. It
but
cost
it
him
it
a
could not have.
lot of money.
It couldn't have gone worse.
Nope.
It couldn't have gone worse. I mean, the Detroit Lions game, the Rams
That was the
game.
worst game. The Detroit Lions game was the worst game because he missed so many opportunities. He was getting pressured, sure, but he had guys open that he just missed. The Rams
Absolutely.
game, he held on to the ball, got sacked 9 times. Detroit, he
Yeah.
escaped. I mean, there was one play where Justin Jefferson was a great route, got by his guy wide open in the corner, and the ball just sailed 10 yards over his head. Nothing he can
Yeah.
do. And that game was close the whole way. The Rams game was a blowout after the second quarter. But Detroit, we were in it all the way till about the fourth quarter because our defense was holding them. And Darnold just folded like a cheap tin.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
And,
It's just
yeah.
tough because, like, as a GM, as a coach, I'm going to look at that film from the Rams Vikings game.
Hmm.
I think it hurts the comparison when you have a game where you're like, I just saw these two quarterbacks go up against each other. And actually, I didn't
Hmm.
just see them go up against each other once. I saw them go against each other twice, and two times Darnold got schooled by Stafford. I mean,
I
it's
wouldn't
tough
say so much the first time. The first time that was a close game. Darnold played well. And I'm not even going to touch on that face mask they didn't call. That's neither here nor there. Vikings had a chance to win that game at the end. Darnold played fairly well. He didn't play great, but he played fairly well. This last
I
one,
don't know.
different story.
I mean, he did okay, but like Stafford had four touchdowns that game.
But how many
That's
yards did he have?
279. He had more yards than Darnold. He
Well,
had more
yeah, but
touchdowns.
all I'm saying is he didn't have many yards. He's had short fields and just scored touchdowns instead of running it in. So I don't think they had any rushing touchdowns. They had all passing. Am I correct on that?
For who? For the Vikings?
For the
For
Rams, I think they scored all their touchdowns through the air. Like they got in the red zone and
yes.
Stafford just threw touchdowns.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I just think it's tough. It's tough for me to think
yeah.
that I get what you're saying. It's just I as I'm making that choice between those two quarterbacks, because I mean I think we're
Mhm.
both agreed that those are probably the two main quarterbacks this offseason, right? They're the
Absolutely.
two main options. So
Yep.
if you're gonna go with option A, option B, if I'm
And
only giving up
honestly, Stafford might not even truly be an option, but it's a possibility. Darnold 100% is an
oh,
option.
I think he's an option. I think the Rams are I, I think the
Maybe.
Rams
I'm
are
not
open
completely
to it.
sold yet. I'm not completely sold yet. I
So
need
are
to know
you are
who
you
their second option is
so
after
is that
Stafford.
so are you saying he's gonna stay?
I think he's going to stay in the end.
Okay.
I think they're playing a really dangerous game with him. Not necessarily the smartest game, but a little dangerous game saying, "Hey, yeah, we'll give you permission to go seek a trade, see what you're really worth." And then they're thinking he's going to come crawling back saying, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Pay me what you think is fair." Not going to happen. He's going to get offered something really nice. But in the end, I don't think the Rams are going to pull the trigger unless they get offered a first or second round pick. And I don't know if anyone's going to be willing to pay that much for a 37-year-old.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Uh,
interesting, though. It's going to be interesting. We spent a lot of time on Matthew Stafford.
we sure did. Well, because I can't think of a quarterback situation for now, well, I'll put this caveat in there.
Yeah,
If Kirk Cousins gets released,
which I believe he will.
I could see that as a destination for the Rams. But because that has not happened yet, like
Oh, so you're
because that
saying
hasn't
Kirk
come
Cousins
together,
possibly to the Rams?
I could see it. I could see that move
Yeah, I don't
happening.
mind that.
There's also been discussion about how he suffered an injury late in the year that helped
That was
perhaps
funny.
who
Yeah.
knows? Who knows, right? Who knows how true it is and if it's an excuse.
Hmm.
And agents always try to float that out there, which, by the way,
Oh yeah.
trade season's upon us. Not surprised that this story rolls around that,
Oh
hey, he
yeah.
was dealing with an injury.
Absolutely.
And
And Kirk Cousins is the best. Well, Kirk Cousins' agent is the best negotiator. He's gonna get paid a bag somewhere again, just because that's
yeah, he
what Kirk
will.
Cousins does.
He sure does. Yeah, he'll be getting double paid. He won't be getting
Yep.
paid like the 40 million a year. He'll be
Hmm.
getting 80 million because he's got one contract that's expired and or that he's still on.
Hmm.
And
Hey,
all
hey, maybe
right.
the Steelers sign him because it's just like Russell Wilson.
Oh, if the Steelers signed him, Mike Tomlin would have to be let go after the end of this year. And to me, that is just the epitome of the. It's not that It's not that Mike Tomlin's not a good coach. I just think that
Hmm.
the games maybe passed him by. That's the
Yeah,
part I'm
it
kind
might
of
be time for
curious
him to
about.
go. Yeah, I don't think I'm kind of thinking this might be his last year as well, unless they play really well. They maybe win one or two playoff games. different story. I don't think that's going to happen. But he's a really good coach, Hall of Fame coach, but sometimes it's just time. I think, like you mentioned before with Andy Reid of the Eagles, sometimes it's just time. Time to move on, get a new face in there, change things up, and probably about where the Steelers need to go.
Yeah, and sometimes I think it's just good to be able to it's tough to be told no. It's tough to be told you're not
Hmm.
doing good enough, but sometimes it makes you have the tough conversations
Hmm.
and you emerge better for it. So
Yeah.
we'll see. It's tough to say. Should we pivot over to Myles Garrett?
Let's do it. Let's do it. So with Myles Garrett, I'll
Mhm.
start here with a little brief thing. Whenever I think about a week or so ago, whenever he was saying he sent out a really lovely letter to the team, and it was very professional. It was awesome, saying I love my time here, but it's just time for me to go. I want to seek professional talent elsewhere. I want to be traded. It was very well done. Respect to Myles Garrett. I love that. And then there were speculations where he's going to go. And in my thoughts, there was two top teams. And these two top teams are not two good teams for us. But I was thinking either the Commanders or the Lions. It made a ton of sense. A ton of sense. They're both really good. One team was surprisingly good, but they're both really good. And they have cap space, they have trade capital. Let's make a push for the Super Bowl. Made a ton of sense. But then the Browns owner goes and says Myles Garrett's going to stay stay as a Brown. We are not trading Myles Garrett. And then Myles Garrett turns around and says that he is not signing an extension. So, in my thoughts, in my eyes, in my brain, whenever someone says I am not going to sign an extension, why would you not trade that player? Because they're going to walk for nothing.
Mhm.
Maybe a comp pick in the future. I'm not a huge fan of that thought, and we'll touch on that in a later episode. But he says a ton of value right now. You could probably get at least a first round pick for him right now. Actually, might be more, but at least a first round pick right now instead of a possible third round pick in the future. And he's saying he's not going to resign. I say trade him. That team is a dumpster fire anyway. Get some draft picks, try to reset. He's 29, I think, going on 30, something like that. So he's still got
Yeah, I
some
think he's
good
going to
football
go into
left.
29. I think this would be his 29th
29.
season, or
Okay.
29th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's still got probably 2 or 3 years of elite play left. So someone will pay you a first round pick, if not more. So if I was the GM of the Browns, thank you for your service, Miles. We're going to see what we can get for you. And
I
then
mean,
Commanders and the Lions should be calling.
here's something I didn't even realize, Andrew, but right now, as of this moment, according to Spot Track's salary cap tracker, the
Hmm.
Browns have negative $24 million in cap
Yeah, them and the
space.
Saints have negative cap space this year, which Saints always
Uh,
do. But
I mean,
yeah,
that's just unacceptable to be that far in the
yeah,
bag. And
because
you,
of one guy, Deshaun Watson.
well, I mean, let's correct that. You know, the Rams are, or the, excuse me, the Browns are where they are because the fact that their ownership has meddled far too
Fair.
much into affairs and they've bombed everything. I mean,
That's fair.
what draft pick have they nailed in the past few years?
The
It's
last
really
one
tough
was
for
Nick
me to think
Chubb.
of one. And you know, did they nail it? I mean, he had a good moment, but then he had a devastating injury. And how much is he?
Yeah,
I think he's
that's
even a
bad
free
luck.
agent. I mean, it's fair, but you know, part of being a good team is you have to calculate, be prepared for bad
Yeah,
injury luck. And
and like the NFLPA survey, their facilities aren't very good, so maybe that's helped to increase some injury potential. I don't know.
just man, that's just crazy. But
Yeah.
digging in deeper into the Browns question, your
Hmm.
Commanders pick, I can't disagree with it. I think it would be a fantastic spot for him to go. I think it makes a
Yeah.
ton of sense. Dan Quinn, can we give that guy his roses finally? I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
I, I mean, can we finally say that the reason that they lost the Super Bowl was because of a subpar coaching job by the offensive coordinator that couldn't finish the job? I mean, just unbelievable. Just so
Hmm.
ridiculous how conservative they got in that game. But anyway,
Hmm.
my whole point is that if I'm Myles Garrett, I want to go to someone that knows how to play defense, and
Absolutely.
Dan Quinn does that. I mean,
Yep.
uh, the Cowboys were a constant thorn on the Eagles' side with Dan Quinn there. He was really
Hmm.
good at putting pressure on Jalen Hurts. Um, I think that he's a big part of the reason why the Cowboys were so successful, why they dropped off. So when I look at the Commanders moving forward, if they could get Myles Garrett,
That's scary.
it would be tough to not consider them as a co-favorite for the NFC East. I couldn't bump them up to being the lone favorite over the Eagles,
Yeah.
but a
Yeah. I still think they're a player or two
co-favorite-esque
away.
vibe.
I would if they got Myles Garrett and no other like premium talent through free agency or anything, I would say that Eagles are probably still a game on the win column up on them because the Eagles still have a lot of pieces. The Commanders have nice pieces, but they're still missing a couple here, a couple there, and they're losing some players in free agency. So and they're talking about trading Jonathan Allen. We'll get to that. But if they got, say, a Myles Garrett and let's say a T. Higgins, okay, now we're
Oh boy.
talking.
Oh boy. That would
Because that's
be
a possibility because they have like 100 million in cap space. They have a ton of cap space, and they're trying to trade Jonathan Allen to get more cap space. They're going to be making some moves this offseason. They're a team I'm watching. I'm watching close what Washington's doing. Because when you have a rookie quarterback
yeah.
on his contract that's he's making 4 or 5 million a year and he's playing this well, you capitalize. You do everything you can to bring in as much talent to win now before he has to get paid. So I'm looking at them. And on the flip side, going to the Lions, with Aiden Hutchinson coming back, if they added Myles Garrett, have Garrett on one side, Hutch on the other, no one's going to be able to have time to pass the ball because you can't double team both. That'd be crazy. They still need a lot of fix on their secondary because they have a couple good safeties, but their corners they were spotty. Their linebackers were fine. So they need spots there. But if they got a Myles Garrett, I would not be able to argue the Super Bowl talk that they would get. Right now, I
Mhm.
do. I don't think they're quite there. I don't believe in Jared Goff as a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Can he get you there? Possibly, but I don't think he can win the big game. But with a defense that is not letting anybody get any time, just like the Eagles did to Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts didn't really have to do much. Jared Goff could do what Jalen Hurts did in that game. He could do something similar. Throw for 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, and then the defense does the rest. He could do that. I just don't think he can win the game for him. But if they had a
Mhm.
defense that's winning the game, I'd be on board with that. Um, so yeah, Myles Garrett to the Commanders or to the Lions, we would hate that, but it makes too much sense.
The part that I'm trying to think about in my head is just looking at these cap numbers. I don't like the
Hmm.
trade market that the Browns are entering into. I don't feel it. It
Mm.
doesn't feel very deep to me because, we dig through the list. If
Hmm.
Myles Garrett gets as much as they talk about, which they're saying is somewhere close to $40 million a year.
That's insane. I don't think he should get that much at his age.
Well, but the problem is that really are they really going to stand tough and say, listen, you're kind of old? I just don't think that'll happen. I think that
Yeah.
if I think a few things are going to have to work out. One, the Browns are going to have to decide that they're going to get serious about the cap situation, which would incentivize
Hmm.
trading Myles Garrett and letting him go.
And I think they
To the
have to be under
team,
the cap by like March 4th or something like that,
yeah,
or
I think
March
that that's
10th,
right.
something like that. They have to be under
Um,
the cap,
it,
so they literally have
it's
like a
by
week to decide.
um, looking to see when the NFL year starts.
I want to say it's March 10th.
March 12th is when the year begins, so that sounds right. It's right about then when you'd have to have your cap situation figured out.
Yeah, so they
Um,
have about a week and a half, something like
not
that.
long. It's
Two
just tough
weeks,
though
2 weeks.
because I don't think the Cardinals would be someone that Garrett wants to go to. So I think you take him off the list.
They have the cap space, they have the desire to, but I do agree with that. I don't think Garrett's
I
like, but does Garrett have a no trade clause? Does he have any say in the matter? is another
I
question. I
I
don't know.
I think he could have an Antonio Brown-esque like no,
Maybe.
I'm not going to Buffalo type of a vibe. Like
Yeah,
I
and
could
he could
see
say, "I'm not
him.
signing an extension," and so the Cardinals are like, "Well, then we don't want to trade for him." So that's
So
possible.
I could see that happening.
Hmm.
I could see the Commanders being there. I think the Bears would be a no. Well, I don't know. I mean, the new coach that they
The new
got, maybe
they
there's
got
the
new things
vibes are
going on.
right.
Maybe it's possible. Yeah,
I could see that one. So let's say two for now. You know, the Commanders, Bears, I'm with you. Lions, I'm on the cusp only because of the fact it's a huge salary cap that they'd have. There's huge salary cap hit they'd have to take if they're going to get Garrett. And do
absolutely.
they
And
really want to do that?
in
I
the
don't
next few
know.
years, their cap is going to be in a little bit of trouble with all the guys hitting. So I do hear you there. But if I'm the Lions and I feel like if I get Myles Garrett, I can win the Super Bowl, I'm pulling the Rams. And I'm like, I don't care about the next few years. I want to win now. And so I
Is
would
the
personally do it if I feel like I'm that close.
is it was that why they lost to the Commanders though? Because that's what I would think about if I'm the GM. Why did we lose to the Commanders? What was the X factor? I
Well,
don't
their
think that's
offense didn't
why.
really do anything.
But that's exactly what I would think is okay, well then why am I investing in a defense that I feel like is already doing the good
Yeah.
job? Aiden Hutchinson's coming back. Literally, you
Hmm.
know, half of our IR players were defensive contributors. I
Yeah.
don't I'm struggling to see why that would happen. I get it. I just feel
Hmm.
like logistically looking at draft picks, looking at salary, I'm not
Hmm.
I'm not vibing with this move. It
And
feels like that would be a miscalculation. I feel like it'd be a
yeah.
miscalculation if they
And I
did this.
think the GM did say something like that they don't feel like they have enough to trade for him. I read something where the GM basically said that they're probably not in the market for Myles Garrett. So I do hear you're saying. I think he said the same thing. Me personally, though, if I feel like I am that close and he is a superstar talent, and you saw what happens when you rush the quarterback, what the Eagles did, and if you get on the edge, it won't be up the middle like you guys did, but if you get two on the edge that cannot be blocked, then what are you going to do? You're gonna have to run the ball the whole game, basically.
I mean, but here's the other thing too. The Lions have a first, second, third, fourth, sixth, seventh, and one more seventh. That is not a lot of ammo.
Yeah,
Uh,
not really, but they can trade in the future too. They can say we'll give you a one this year and a second next year, something like that. And my thought process is win now. We're about the future later. If I'm the Lions and I feel like I can win now, I'm doing it. If I'm like you're saying, I think like their GM was saying, if they're looking to continue success, to continue to build, then no, I'm not doing it because he costs too much. Like you said, don't have much draft capital anyway, and their salary is gonna start hitting Jared Goff, St. Brown, Penei Sewell. They're gonna really start hitting, not this year, but the following and the following. Their numbers are gonna be high. So and with Myles Garrett on top of that, that's not good. And they have to extend Aiden Hutchinson. Jahmyr Gibbs extension is coming sooner than we think because he's already been 2 years in the league. And Jameson Williams, they have decided they're going to keep him because he's going to take a lot of money because he's very dynamic. So, I mean, they got a lot of decisions internally to make. So I do get it why Myles Garrett might not be on the board. But if I feel like I can win this year, I might just do it. I might pull the Rams.
so do you think he's on the move?
In the end, I mean, that's tough. Because at first I was thinking, no, he can't be. But with him saying that he's not going to sign an extension, and like you said, their cap situation the way it is, I might be leaning toward he's leaving. I might be leaning toward they're going to make a blockbuster like a Luka Doncic type trade, and no one thinks it's going to happen, but it happens. Where? Maybe the
Uh,
Commanders, maybe the Bears. I don't know. We'll see. But I think I'm leaning maybe like a 60-40 to where he's not going to be a Brown start of 2025 kickoff.
I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, I'll give you, I think he's on the move, but I'll give you my three teams I think to watch out for. Washington, Chicago, for sure, I think are the two. But the
Hmm.
team to watch out for, the Los Angeles Chargers. I could
Mm.
see that potentially making sense. They have the cap space. I could see it. I don't think it'll
Okay.
happen, but I could see them edging their way in. I don't see it for Las Vegas. New England, I think, is
Yeah.
too far away from being competitive. If they had more going for them, I think
What
they'd
if
be
the
part of the
Chiefs somehow try to
conversation.
get him?
After the franchise tag that he just did, I don't think they can.
They
I
have
think
no
that
money now. They
I
had money
think that
problems already.
yeah, I think the Chiefs are now grounded because of this franchise tag.
Hmm.
I think the Chiefs looked at it.
Hmm.
They had one move to make, and they watched the Super Bowl tape and thought, we can't lose this guy because our offensive line was already a train wreck, and it would be
Yeah,
even
and he was
worse
kind of their
without Smith.
best lineman that game. He got beat a
Yeah.
few times still, but he was their best lineman that
Oh,
game.
he was for sure their best.
Hmm.
Also, I forgot to say this, and Eagles fans would, you know, ridicule me for this, but he's not going to the Eagles. It's not
Oh,
happening.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you guys
The
have a lot of
the
decisions to make yourself.
the amount of rumors I've heard about him going to Philly, it makes no
Yeah,
sense. It makes no
yeah,
sense. It,
yeah.
by the
And
way, we
even though
have a
I would love him on the Vikings, but that makes no sense either. We have the cap space, but no, doesn't make any
I
sense.
I would argue it makes more sense to go to Minnesota for him than it would be for to go to Philly. I just
Yeah, the only issue for the Vikings though is which I've heard this said before and I completely believe it, but defense coordinators don't get players to fit their system. They fit their system to their players. Because if you're just picking players that fit your system, then you're missing out on great talent. If you're adjusting to what your roster is, that's a great DC. So Myles Garrett, he plays great in the 4-3. He's defensive end. We're mainly a 3-4 with our edge rushers playing in coverage. You don't want Myles Garrett in coverage. You want him always rushing the passer. So unless we change our scheme a little bit, which is possible, very possible. But I just don't see that quite happening because we have two really good pass rushers. Garrett is a notch above, of course, but we already have two really good ones. In our 3-4 scheme, we need a defensive tackle, and Myles Garrett's not playing DT. So, but Jonathan Allen from the Commanders, that's a different story.
I like
That's a
this.
different
Where are you going,
story.
Andrew?
Yeah, yeah. So, do we want to touch on that now, or do we want to continue
Yeah,
Myles
go
Garrett?
ahead.
Because,
No, go ahead.
okay. Okay, so with Jonathan Allen asking to be traded, and the Commanders are letting him seek out his trade value. He's making, I believe, like 15 million this year, so it's not a bad deal right now. But he's going to want to redo his deal. And I've been listening to a lot of people talk about this, and at his age, at his productivity, there are guys making around the 20, 21 million a year range. So it's probably what he's going to get. That's a little steep for a 30-year-old, but if that's the market, that's the market. So someone's probably going to pay him that. Um, and I went back and forth on thinking about this. So is he going to be cut or is someone going to actually trade for him? I think someone might actually send a pick his way, a pick the Commander's way, and actually trade for him instead of wait for him to be cut. And that's the problem with the Vikings. We don't really have any draft picks right now. We have four picks this year. A first, a third, and two fifths. And the third is a comp pick, which isn't 100% official until later on before the draft. I mean, everyone says we're getting it, so we're getting it, but it's not 100% official. So right now, we can trade three draft picks this year, a first and two fifths. Um, so I don't know if we're going to be able to pull it off. I want us to, because that's the type of player we need. We can draft a D tackle in the draft with our first round pick, absolutely. But the draft is unproven players. Jonathan Allen's proven that he can do it. He can rush the passer. That's what the Vikings need. So I want them to try to trade for him. Maybe trade a 2026 second if they'll take that, or a 2026 third. I don't know his true value. Um, but I kind of doubt Minnesota's going to be able to. I hope he gets cut. If he gets cut, he's coming to Minnesota. I'm going to stamp that. I'm going to say that's happening. Take that to the bank because he's already said he would love to play in Minnesota. He's stated that, like verbally and on either social media or being interviewed or something. It's out there in the universe. Says, yeah, I would love to play in Minnesota. So if he gets cut, he's coming on over. But I don't know if we can trade for him. I hope we
Interesting.
get him. I hope we get him because we can use him and one of these other free agents like Williams or like Um, oh, there was another guy. I think is Javon Hargrave available? No, it's someone else from the 49ers.
Yes,
There's
he
someone
will be
else.
available. Yeah, no, Javon Hargrave will be available this offseason.
Okay. And he's
They're
yeah, he's
they're
not
letting
what he
him
used to
go.
be. He's not what he used to
Yes.
be, but he's still better than what we got. And we need some defensive tackles that can crush the passer. That's all we need them to do. One job, go after that guy with the ball.
So you don't, I guess I was kind of surprised by your comment about edges, but you don't think Jerry Tillery or Jonathan Bullard are problems? I mean, they both only had one sack this past year. Like, you don't think that getting a defensive end
So
would it be a great upgrade over that?
so they're technically defensive ends, but they played defensive tackle all year. So Minnesota
Okay.
ran four edge rushers most of the time, especially on third downs. So
Hmm.
Van Ginkel and Grenard were the actual on the edge
On the edge.
with Tillard and with some of those other guys sprinkled in, like a Patrick Jones as well. They were the defensive tackles, even though their official position is defensive end.
So what positions, like, what did they line up at? Was it a four? Was it a three? Like, what were they lining up on the?
They mix it up. Yeah, they mix it up.
Because that's
So yeah,
fascinating to me.
Brian Flores is amazing at what he dials up, but he can definitely use some guys up front that can just get to the quarterback without blitzing extra one or two guys.
Hmm.
So that's why getting a Jonathan Allen, getting a Milton Williams, getting Javon Hargrave, getting like a Grant from the draft, one of these guys, that's one of our biggest needs. Is just someone that can rush the passer on their own without us bringing two extra guys on the side. Because like the Rams showed, like the Lions showed, if they know what's coming, oh, there's an empty space right there. Let me just bloop, open guy, 8 yards, whoop, 9 yards, 12 yards, and then dink and dunk, dink and dunk. It's when we confuse quarterbacks with the blitz that we got all of our interceptions. But Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, they see it, all right, dink and dunk, don't, and nothing we can do because we can't get a pass rush with our D tackles.
Hmm.
But that's what I think with Jonathan Allen. I think if he's cut, he's coming over to Minnesota. If he's not cut, if he's traded, I don't think Minnesota's going to get him.
I also think it'd be a bit different for trade too, because I don't think that's a team that the Commanders would want to let get better. Um,
Fair. They probably want him to
just
trade him to the AFC.
yeah, or a team that's just not quite as good in the NFC. I
Hmm.
mean, the Vikings are on their way up. They had a great season last year. I don't think
Hmm.
they're going to drop off a ton if they go with McCarthy next year. But we've talked
It
about that.
all depends on the
We
free
have
agency. We'll touch on this stuff later. This
yes.
is the really juicy stuff we'll dig into.
Um, well, I think that's the main trade candidates. Is there anyone else you want to talk to as far as trade wise?
Um, there's some other guys out there like Jair Alexander has been talked about that he's open to being traded and the Packers are letting him explore, but he's not going to be traded. He was injured all last year. He's not the same guy. He'll be cut. He'll be picked up. Someone will get him.
Yeah,
He'll be useful
I
still.
would I would also throw Cooper Cup in that same category. I don't think he's getting
Yeah, Cooper
traded.
Cup as well. No, he's getting cut.
Cap is
Nope.
too
Yep.
big, did way too
Hmm.
little. So yeah, I'm glad we're in agreement on that. Man, it's amazing.
Yep.
We're just totally on the same page with those two moves, Andrew, because that's exactly what I was gonna say for both guys.
Yeah, there's no way those guys are getting traded. I'm not giving up a third or fourth round pick for Cooper Cup, who's making way too much money,
No,
who's on the wrong side of
no.
30, who's always getting hurt. Same with Jared Alexander. And with Alexander, he's a head case. He's always talking, and even internally, he's a problem in the locker room sometimes, I've heard. So he'll get picked up. He'll produce for someone, a good free agent to pick up when he gets cut. But I'm not even giving up a 6th round pick for him. No, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with you.
The other part
Well,
about all this is the franchise tag thing, though. We can touch on that a little bit to finish this up because there's some guys that have that potential by Tuesday, I think it is. I think it's by Tuesday. They can have that tag window on. The first one, obviously, my heart breaks for Trey. But he's got to stay on a team that's won 2 Super Bowls in 3 years, and he's making 23 million now. He could have came to Minnesota and blocked for JJ McCarthy, but it is what it is. He's off the table. There's other guys out there, other guards, but so he's staying in Kansas City. It sounds like it's not official yet, but every report is saying he's going to get franchise tag. But a couple other big names. I'm going to start with T. Higgins actually, because we touched on him earlier. So internally, the Bengals say they want to keep everyone, and Joe Burrow wants to keep everyone. I don't think they can afford that because they're gonna have to pay Jamar Chase, world record breaking money, just like Jefferson got last year. Jamar Chase is next in line, so he's gonna go above Jefferson. It's just how it works. So he's gonna be the top paid non-quarterback, making probably, I think Jefferson's making 35 million a year. So is he gonna make 37 million a year? Something like that. Maybe even 40. Who knows? Who knows how much the Bengals are gonna pay him? And then they're already paying Burrow. And I believe it's Trey Hendrickson needs to be re-signed too, their best defensive player. And without him, they have nobody on defense. So they probably need to pay him too. A second wide receiver on your team. I mean, the Eagles did it brilliantly by paying them early. That's a brilliant move, getting them early before their cap hit continues to rise, continues to rise. The Bengals didn't do that. T. Higgins is going to offer a ton of money. And the franchise tag for receivers is it like
Oh, it's high.
28, 30,
Yeah.
something like that? I don't think they have enough money to do it. I think T. Higgins is going to be a free agent. And
Yeah.
they're not going to be able to work out a deal because they have no money, and the franchise tag is going to be too high. And I mean, unless they feel like let's just eat this cap this year, try to win a Super Bowl this year, then he walks because I think they can't tag after 2 years in a row. I think after that they're totally a free agent because he got tagged last year. Um, I just don't see it happening. I think he's going to be on the market. Teams like the Commanders, the Patriots, teams like this, they're going to be they're going to be shopping. They got money. So we'll see where he wants to go. But I think he's gone. I don't think he's in Bengal this year.
Yeah. I think that that's a fair assessment. It also doesn't help the fact that the Bengals had such an up and down season last year.
Hmm.
If they got to the playoffs, had a good year, it's easier to swallow
Different
and pay the
story.
franchise tag.
Different story. Yeah, but their defense
But
is so bad.
and also, I don't know if Trey Hendrickson's a lock to come back. He's 30
That's
years
fair.
old.
That's
I
fair.
I mean,
Yeah.
if I'm the Bengals, I'm going to pay T. Higgins before I pay Trey. And it's not because Trey's a
Okay.
bad player, but
Okay.
T. Higgins has more
Age.
time left.
Hmm.
He does. It just how much does Trey Hendrickson have left at that level that he's
Hmm.
produced? He did just have an outstanding season, so I don't want to make it sound like he was a bad. I
Hmm.
mean, clearly the difficult part is the Bengals put themselves in a horrific spot because they did not think ahead. They did not think
Hmm.
ahead. They fought
Yep.
things off as long as they could.
Jamar Chase should have been
Um,
paid already. T. Higgins should have been paid already. They both those contracts should have been done already. If Jamar Chase got his done last year, he's not pushing for 40 million. He's probably getting like 33 to 35.
right, which is a
But
big
now,
difference.
yeah, Jefferson got paid, so he's like, all right, I gotta get more than him. I put up more numbers than him. I'm the next guy in line. So he's gonna get probably 37, 38 in that range.
Yeah, uh, that's going to be very interesting to follow.
Hmm.
I think that's a good person to go with, and I don't think there's anyone else I can top off Andrew. That I don't think this is a big year for franchise tags. My opinion. I don't
Yeah,
see many candidates that make sense. I could potentially see Sam Darnold if the Vikings trade him,
I was gonna
but
touch on that. I was gonna touch on that
is that going
just a
to
little bit, because,
happen?
well,
Maybe.
let me touch on this a little bit. So there's been some steam in the past couple of days with some very plugged in insiders that have
Hmm.
been saying that the Vikings are probably going with JJ McCarthy, which every Vikings fan knew that from the jump that it's not going to be Darnold this year. It's going to be McCarthy. We're riding with him. But that I believe it was not yesterday, the day before yesterday. There was like four insiders talking like right at the beginning of the combine, and they were saying that the Vikings have one of the few rare, very beneficial scenarios where they control Sam Darnold and they can control where he goes because they can tag and trade him. And then the very next day, I think today or yesterday, that was reiterated by someone else saying that, yeah, there's a potential of a tag and trade. So I'm thinking, oh, so if these insiders are saying this, there's legit steam for this. And all Minnesota really needs to do is have two or three teams who want to sign Sam Darnold in free agency be available and compete with each other. And they can say, hey, you can have exclusive negotiating rights with him. We just need a third round pick for him. Maybe a little more extra change, maybe a third and a fifth, something like that. But I think teams like the Steelers, the Raiders, and Giants, Rams, wherever Stafford doesn't go, I think those teams are legit competitors for a Sam Darnold because they all are in quarterback crapshoots. Sam Darnold proved that he can win. He threw 35 touchdowns, 4,000 yards. He was an MVP candidate for a decent chunk of the year. He had a horrible end of the year. We all know that. That cost him a lot of money. But he's going to make more than the franchise tag. Franchise tag's like 41. So he's probably pushing the 43 to 45 range. So no one's going to feel bad about trading for that contract and reworking something. So I think it could happen. And there's been and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the Vikings GM, when he was in an interview on Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that. He was asked, "What's the situation with Sam Darnold?" He said, "We have options." I was like, "Oh, we have options." I thought it was just all right, test free agency, and we're gonna roll with Sam Darnold, we're going with JJ McCarthy. But he said we have options. It's interesting. I don't want to sound like a homer, but all this team sounds like a tag and trade might actually happen. Minnesota needs draft picks. The Steelers, the Raiders, they need a quarterback. Let's make something happen. Give us a third and a five, and he's yours.
Hmm.
And there's only two semi-draftable quarterbacks in this draft. Jackson Dart is getting steamed to be the third, possibly, but
Hmm.
even Shadur and Cam Ward, people are saying, are they really first round picks? Are they really starters in this league? It's debatable. Sam Darnold's a starter in this league. He proved that. He needs to be in a good situation. And I don't know if he's going to get that with some teams. The Steelers make some sense because they have good core, good structure around there. But I don't know. I kind of think it's going to happen.
Hmm.
I think he's going to be tag and traded. And that's so good as a Vikings fan because we need some draft capital
Yeah,
badly.
I'm not seeing it, man. I
You're not
struggle to
seeing
see this
it?
tag trade, but who knows? Things can happen.
Yep.
This feels like the what's happened with Sam Darnold reminds me of the Nick Foles, Carson Wentz right before
Mm.
Foles left in free agency. I feel like it's a similar moment where I thought the Eagles could franchise tag Nick and trade him somewhere else,
Hmm.
and it didn't work out. Maybe. I, I'm like I said, it's tough to know. I'm
Yeah.
skeptical that it's going to work out that way, but
Teams are
you
desperate for
never know.
quarterbacks. Sam Darnold was a number three pick. He's got a cannon for an arm. He's got a lot of just intangibles. It's just that one thing of in those big moments, he folds. If anyone can get that out of him, he could be a legit
It,
guy.
it's
I don't think it's
so
possible,
funny.
but
It's
some people
so
might think
funny,
that.
Andrew, how you've become such a big seller of Sam Darnold, but you're
Oh
absolutely not
yeah.
buying that guy for yourself.
No,
Like you're the
no.
biggest proponent of selling this guy. Like, hey,
I'm
this is
not
the guy you
paying
need. This
I'm
is the
not paying him
one.
45 million. Not when we have JJ McCarthy. Now, if we did not have JJ McCarthy, if we had nobody behind him, oh
Right.
no, come back. Please come back. Let's see if we can run this back. But we got McCarthy's coming. He's coming.
It's interesting. One other quarterback I totally forgot to mention, but as far as just looking at was Geno Smith. I know he's not available. He's a trade
That is
candidate,
interesting.
but I like
That
him.
is an
I
interesting
think
one.
I feel like he's someone that has not gotten. He is not a bad quarterback.
He's Sam
He
Darnold-esque.
is. I think he's Sam Darnold-esque, but I would say he's better. I'd say he's more consistent from what we've seen. There's been big game moments that I've watched
Okay,
and thought,
okay,
okay,
so
Gino,
he's more steady. I think Sam Darnold has a higher potential,
I
but
agree with
also a
that.
lower floor.
Yes, yes.
So
I think that
it's
that's a
like
great way
this
to
is
categorize it.
Gino and this is Sam.
Well, I would say it's like this, right? And Gino's like right in between. Like he's right in between
Mhm.
that range. Like
Right.
he's gonna you
But
know what
can you win a
you're gonna
Super
get.
Bowl with him?
But I think that that's the hard part, man. Like
Does he have any
sometimes you're just
playoff
worried
wins?
about what's that?
Does he have any playoff wins? I don't think
No, I
the
don't think
Seahawks have
so.
won
They
any
lost to
playoff
the
games.
49ers that one year.
Okay.
They went to the
Yeah.
playoffs. But
Okay.
I
Hmm.
mean, that was a tough draw for him to go to play the
Fair.
49ers with the Seahawks.
He
And that
plays them
just,
twice a year all the time. Yeah.
it's just an unfair. I
Hmm.
don't hold that against him.
Oh, we didn't talk about Brock Purdy.
Oh, I mean, we don't have to talk about him. He's
Okay.
staying. He's staying. He's going to sign a contract extension. I mean, to me,
And then the
I think that's
49ers
a
are not going to be any good anymore. That's fair. And I'm not saying anything bad about Purdy. I'm just saying they won't have any money to pay these other superstars. And
I
they're
think
old.
they're just it's a perfect situation where they mismanaged the cap,
Mhm.
mismanaged it.
They
Became
tried
oh,
they tried to win in a 2 3 year window, which can't super blame them for because they were close.
mhm,
But now they got to pay for all those things I did, and they're just going to be an average team for the next few years until
mhm.
they can replenish that roster, get those old guys out of there, and maybe Brock Purdy can be the guy. I don't know.
The tough part that I think for the 49ers is if I'm a GM, I am not a big fan of reworking a deal because you're unhappy with the
Mm,
financial structure. That to
hmm
me would make me very annoyed and very frustrated.
hmm
When you sign a dotted line for an agreement, you better be happy with that agreement because we're not going to open it back up for you to make you happy again.
Yeah.
And because, like, for example, Christian McCaffrey wanted
hmm
a new deal after going to the Super Bowl, and I didn't think he deserved it. It's not the fact that he's not a great player,
His
but
age.
he was already getting really good money. He didn't need
hmm
even more money. So, like, for
hmm
example, I'm going to watch this year very closely to see what the Eagles do with Saquon Barkley. If I'm the Eagles, I don't want to touch that contract.
hmm
I want to write it out, be very grateful
Saquon
for what,
signed it. Yep.
thank you for what you did, but we are going to part ways after this contract. It just the reality is there's the 30-year gap is real. So that
It really
contract is
is.
a problem. But the other one that I give him a hard time for, that Trent Williams contract.
Oh, oh.
You don't reward a player for sitting out training camp, coming in
Uh-huh.
late, admitting to the press that because he sat out that it affected his play. Sorry.
hmm
Sorry.
And
It's
Brandon
nothing
Ayuk was the
against
same
you,
thing.
but
He sat out, it affected
I,
his play, and then he got
it,
hurt, which that doesn't coincide, I don't think,
that
but
one's a little different because he's a rookie and he doesn't want to not get a contract ever. Whereas I think Trent
fair.
Williams and
Fair.
Christian McCaffrey, I put in a different category. Listen,
That's fair.
once you've gotten your feast, the sympathy goes
hmm
away.
hmm
That feast can last you a lifetime. Your family should be taken care of for a lifetime. So my
hmm
sympathy for you goes down dramatically once you've gotten a huge
hmm
payday. And they already got that. And not to mention, they didn't just already get paid. They're not even talking about like, needing to get a new contract. They're halfway through their contract saying, this contract isn't good enough for me anymore.
Right.
Like that's
Yep.
completely no. I just
Yep.
I think those two moves have put them in a horrible spot.
hmm
They just put in so
hmm
much money, and now what do? You got to pay Purdy. I can understand what you're saying. Like I hear you. It's a fair argument, but man, I just absolutely mismanaged so many financial decisions.
hmm
That's just cratering the team. So yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
it for me though on the franchise front. I don't know if there's anything else you'd
Yeah.
say as far as
I
tags.
think that's good. Yeah. I think that's good. Yeah, that probably does it for this episode. Because next we're going to be talking about the combine, and there's been some not necessarily rule changes yet, but some discussion about rule changes. One that really affects the Eagles, and something hilarious about that. Korean Packers are whiners. But we'll talk about that in the next episode. Thank you guys for joining us in the Gridiron Grind with Andrew and Lance. We will see you next time.
See you guys soon.